Wednesday, October 1st, Bitcoin at 118,000 basically as I record this. MicroStrategy closed at 338.4. Sorry for my absence. I think I mentioned in my last video I had to travel, did a little bit of business in Europe, did a little bit of pleasure in Europe as well, had a little vacation, and now I'm back. So let's get right into it. This is my 8-year green channel on the Bitcoin chart, meaning it encapsulates 8 years of price action going back to the 2017 top, which you see here. If we connect that line out to the 2021 tops right there, well, you get the channel that we're looking at. It also lines up perfectly with the bottom there. So let's look at where price is currently. What do you know? We're rubbing right up against that 8-year channel resistance, which, by the way, I feel comfortable. I'm going to switch this from weekly to daily candles. I feel comfortable calling it resistance until we close above it. So anybody wanting to go irresponsibly long Bitcoin or Bitcoin adjacent equities, just consider that until we close back above that 8-year channel. It is resistance by definition. Now, if you want to short Bitcoin or Bitcoin adjacent equities while we're underneath it but close to it, I think that makes a lot of logical sense. Did I take any short positions? No. By the way, also, disclosure, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, and I own Bitcoin and I own MSTR and other Bitcoin adjacent stocks. All right. I just wanted to say that, it's resistance, so you could go short. And then if that resistance flips to support because we close above it, well, you theoretically might only have a very minor loss. And that would make a lot, in terms of trading, make a lot of sense to me, just as a teaching opportunity there. Below resistance, not a great time to go long. Above resistance, flip to support, a great time to go long. In theory, right? Not financial advice. So that's my green channel. If we get above that, guys, tomorrow the level is going to be about 117,950. The next target on this chart is going to be all the way up here at 126,250 tomorrow. I don't think we get up there in one day, but I did just want to mention that level. Now I want to look at my Bitcoin red chart, and I hate when charts are too busy. Let me just zoom out. So this is a similar chart, except for we're not including the 2017 top. This is only 5 years of Bitcoin price action going back to the 2021 top back here. You'll notice we get a more aggressive expansion angle. If I want to illustrate this on the same chart, this is what the chart that we just looked at looked like. Okay, it looked like that. So for perspective now, we're in a more aggressive expansion here on the red channel. And what I wanted to mention is that, well, we've got quite a ways higher to go as supported by this linear channel. We're currently only at like roughly maybe the 20% with relation to the top of the channel, which currently today is up here at 227,000. And the bottom channel support today is down here at 92,500 for perspective. So the only reason I share this, guys, is because it's cool to like throw out big numbers for how high Bitcoin's going to go or throw out bad numbers for how low Bitcoin's going to go. But like, it's always good to kind of check it in the charts and see what's actually supported by the TA. And this is like the most basic TA you could possibly do. So the reason I'm just sharing that is because if anybody says, oh, Bitcoin's going to 250K tomorrow, it's like, well, it could, but it would have to break out of this channel, which it absolutely, I think, will by the end of this run. I really do. But I'm not projecting that to happen anytime soon. Okay, we'll have that conversation another day. But this aggressive expansion angle does support some high prices. Okay, very high prices. I think the 50% line is a magnet as well. And depending on when you get there, it's currently like tomorrow, for instance. Tomorrow, the 50% is at 160,000. Now, if I zoom all the way out, I just wanted to share that if I do a fib retrace from the 2021 double top from November at 69,000, and retrace it to zero, what you'll notice is this actually does a great job giving us significant Bitcoin levels that followed. Some more significant than others. For instance, the 236 fib basically gave us the bottom there at 15 or 16,000. You had a lot of consolidation around the 786 fib. The zero line we came back to and spent a lot of time consolidating around before breaking up and out to 112,000, which is the 1.618 fib. And it made sense that we didn't just dust this level the way that it implied we might have after we got rejected off of it in May of 2025 and then broke through on a massive green candle in July. Looked like a breakout, was a fake out, got knocked back down, but now we're spending more and more time consolidating around it. I think that makes a lot of sense because, well, if you zoom out, guys, the next significant fib level is up there at 181,000. Now, we're not just going to go in a straight line up to 181, but we could get there very quickly. And I can explain how that is when I get to the logarithmic chart for Bitcoin and talk about the breakout level. But I also just wanted to briefly kind of follow up on what I talked about in my last video, which is that I saw both a bull flag, which I'll show you here. All right, I said, hey, we've been in this bull flag since July. The way I used to have it drawn was like this. And then I realized it actually makes a lot more sense if we just expand it out like this, and you'll notice it connects the tops here. We only recently broke out of it today, which is great news. You know, breaking out of a bull flag implies bullish momentum, implies we're going higher. I like that a lot. It also looks like a wedge, and the previous breakouts in 2020 and 2017 had a lot of wedges. And the one thing that was on my mind that I couldn't really reconcile when we were showing all this strength back here in May and July was, where is the wedge? You know, it did not look similar to what we had seen in the past that preceded those massive log chart breakout moves. And what do you know? You know, the hunch was correct, because look what Bitcoin's price action essentially did. It essentially formed this wedge, consolidated around, killed a bunch of time, and then broke out today. You know, does that mean, by the way, does that mean we can't retest the top of this wedge? You know what stock likes to do this a lot? And don't take me at my word. Go look for yourself in TradingView. Tesla. You know how Tesla just had a very similar looking wedge that consolidated dating back to April 2024, if I remember correctly? Yeah, Tesla did that, and it broke out a few weeks ago. But if you bought the initial breakout, guess what it did? It did what it did in the past, and it actually retraced lower. So the breakout level was here, and then it made you essentially sit on your hands, or made you want to sell, because it retraced further than the breakout level to the top of the wedge. And that was essentially the, if you're a disciplined trader, the really beautiful entry, because what happened after that? Well, I think we're in like the 4th week straight of Tesla putting on gains since then. So I just wanted to say, guys, like, just because Bitcoin's strong today, again, bringing it back to this chart here, until we close above the 8-year channel, this, what I just drew here, is still on the table. Breakout, retrace, similar to Tesla. Moving on, let's talk about the Bitcoin log chart. I love this chart. This is what gets me excited to be in this trade, because this is like my compass, essentially keeping me on the right side of things, hopefully. We are not above the breakout level currently, but we are within striking distance. And to me, like, there is no better trade to be in. It doesn't matter if, like, theoretically, of course, other stocks are going to outperform Bitcoin and MicroStrategy and the stocks that are the trades that we normally talk about here. Yes, there will be other opportunities that outperform, but I'm just so dialed in and laser focused on not messing this up and on maximizing my gains. This chart is telling me really the whole story, if you ask me. As we're below this, we have a significant hurdle to clear above. This is a weekly chart. So this week, the hurdle we need to clear is 119,900. Next week, it will be 120,200. But if and when we close above this log chart breakout level, expect the explosive moves to start. It doesn't have to happen right away. Like, using the past as our guide, it doesn't mean that we just instantly put in a 10% green candle, but it means that we are for sure eligible to do so. Whether or not it happens right away, or, you know, in a week or two, that the move really starts to pick up. And the timing couldn't be better. Of course, it's also in the 4th quarter. If you guys have been subscribed since, I don't know when I started doing these videos, like April or May, well, hey, we've had to sit on our hands. We've had to sit through some ups and some downs, but it looks like we're on the cusp of this thing getting the real move to start. So 119,900 is the level that I'm watching this week in terms of the log chart breakouts. And just as a reminder, in case there's any new watchers, new subscribers, that the previous log chart breakout right here was 2020. Following the breakout, and this is from the breakout, because it did actually break and then backtest. So I'm not measuring from the backtest. I'm measuring from the initial breakout. Bitcoin gained 274% in 20 weeks. And if we go back to the 2017 move from the initial, all right, I'm going to measure from the actual breakout, not the fake out. It gained 635% in 21 weeks. So the moves that follow the log chart breakouts are significant. And if you just average out those previous two, it comes out to like more than a 5x return on Bitcoin. So let's just say Bitcoin triples this time. Well, I measure Bitcoin's breakout from 116,000 from July. So you're essentially looking at, 116 times 3, and we're talking about Bitcoin going to 348,000, guys. Like, I think it is on the table, even though it might sound crazy right now to talk about. I've also, I have a private group where we talk a lot about not just MSTR, but we talk about other Bitcoin proxies. I did a video semi-recently where I went through 16 different Bitcoin miners and talked about how the patterns on these miners to me is saying, hey, like breakouts are imminent if they haven't already started. And they're essentially breaking out from, like, do you guys remember the tariff sell-off in April? A lot of these Bitcoin miner charts are looking like a lot of the equities did following the tariff sell-off. They're at like their zero line, and there's essentially either the company's going to die and it's going to break out and lose that critical support, or it's going to fly and put in multiples of returns over coming months, which would coincide with what I'm seeing here on the Bitcoin log chart. If it's going to break out, it would make sense that so many of these miners are looking so strong. I even put together 2 different ways of approaching, you know, your portfolio and essentially balancing your exposures to the miners. That's all in my group linked below. That's Bitcoin. Oh, no. I didn't talk. We're not done with Bitcoin yet. And then we're talking about MicroStrategy. I did want to mention here, look at Bitcoin. This is on a log chart, okay? And this ascending wedge with double breakdowns, okay? One there and one there. I call that the scoop, okay? I don't know why I call it that. Well, I do kind of know why I call it that. You could even call this a scoop right there, or maybe I just need to redraw the line. The one thing that I wanted to mention about the double scoop right before it gets to the end of this rising wedge and hopefully breaks to the upside is this is a spitting image of something I've talked about previously. If I open up gold, it is a spitting image of the rising wedge of gold right here with the double scoop move. 1, 2. I mean, what are the chances? And I just knew this from memory. And we only just this past week had the second scoop. So it's literally 1, 2 right there. BTC USD, it is the same thing. Obviously on different time horizons with a little bit of difference in the, you know, sharpness of the angle of incline. But I couldn't believe that they both assets. By the way, if I see a stock doing that kind of thing, I'm like, no, I don't trust that a stock is going to recover like that. If you ask me, they're almost like technically governed or treated differently by the market maker algorithms. Assets like Bitcoin and gold, I've seen do this, so it doesn't freak me out, even though as somebody who's a pretty rational, realistic person, it makes me feel weird to be like, hey guys, just be calm. I know it looks really bad, but hopefully we'll end up on the right side of this. Like, let me show you how bad it really was with Bitcoin here. So this wedge, the way that you see it on my screen right now is adjusted. I used to have it drawn like this. Can we just appreciate how insane anybody who sat on their hands through that move last week is? And I mean, that's the definition of diamond hands, which by the way, I did, but it was a lot easier for me because I was, you know, working. And then like I said, I was on a little bit of a vacation after that. But look at this. You broke down from this wedge. The next day, reject off the bottom and push lower. The next day, you can't recover. Although it is, you know, higher, low, higher, low, higher, low. So there were hints. But man, like these algorithms do know how to make people suffer. I don't know why I'm laughing. If I didn't laugh, I'd probably cry. But anyways, you got the double scoop move. And now it looks like we are right back in the wedge. And just for comparison, let's go back over to gold really quickly and look at what came next. Since breaking out, it's up around 82%, which I'm sure some people probably waited a decade for a move like this on gold. Notoriously slow mover, if you ask me. I was buying gold back in like 2020, and I've pretty much doubled up on my position, my average cost. So it's crazy. If gold did this, imagine what Bitcoin is going to do when it breaks out of a similar wedge with such a similar pattern there, the double scoop, the recovery. Your guess is as good as mine as to what comes next for Bitcoin, but I already told you, I think anywhere from $250,000 to 350K is squarely within the cards. And I also wanted to share, before we pivot to MSTR, a couple different tweets from some different people. I'll also link to these in the description, so go give them credit for their work. Colin Talks Crypto, talking about the ISM, the business cycle, basically looks like it's going to extend like the measure. Well, Bitcoin tops have previously kind of correlated with tops in the ISM, and the ISM has barely picked up, implying there's a lot more room to run. And if and when it does, and it coincides with a Bitcoin bull cycle, a log chart breakout, as I like to call it, this could run into spring of 2026, which is my lean. That's been my lean for a while now. I think it makes the most sense. Here is AEX Alex Wasey, basically showing that government shutdowns, which, I mean, I'm completely unplugged from mainstream media and mainstream news, so I had no clue this was even a thing, even though I live kind of close to DC. Anyways, apparently been bullish in the past for Bitcoin. I don't know if it's really a trade signal, but I just thought it was interesting. I had someone in my group kind of ask me what I thought, and I said, honestly, I don't really know, and I'm too lazy to go chart it out, but it looks like now someone else did the work for me, and in the past has been not really a bad thing. Here is Milk Road Macro saying Bitcoin is now following a 5-year cycle, and again cites the ISM as the leading indicator for the timing of these cycles, essentially we're really talking about when it's going to top, when it's going to finish. And yeah, I think the 5-year cycle is the new thing, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be selling and buying and selling blindly based on previously determined like time cycles. It just means we got to be dynamic in our thinking, guys. This is Ted Pillows saying Bitcoin's been highly correlated to gold with an 8-week lag. Right now, gold hitting new highs, which means Bitcoin will do this next. Maybe we could see another big correction, but overall Q4 would be big for Bitcoin. Yeah, so far so good there. And I mean, I don't even think it would be a big correction if you actually look like the magnitude of that pullback would be essentially what I was talking about here, where we could retest the top of the wedge that we just broke out of, similar to what Tesla does. So, I mean, I don't know. I hate speaking it into existence. I don't want to be that guy putting it out there, but just don't be too freaked out if Bitcoin does pull back a little bit. Again, let's check back in. Yep, still at that resistance there. That's an 8-year trend line, 8-year channel. So it's going to take a little bit to push through. And once we push through the next time, guys, I think it's for good. So Bitcoin's going to do what it's going to do. All right, from the final red bar before the red oscillator flipped green, or the oscillator flipped green, Bitcoin printed its last significant decline before ripping higher with consecutive green candles, not looking back for 5 to 9 months. That was from September 28th, by the way, so a few days old, but that's Decode Jar on Twitter, talking about that this decline was basically in the cards. He's looking at the MACD here on the 3-week candles, and essentially just saying, hey, you know, the decline that we just experienced last week was honestly the most muted by far relative to the past, at only like 7%. And everything that preceded those previous ones, which honestly, he's basically got the log chart breakouts on this chart, just, you know, in a different view. And you know what came next, guys? Massive, massive multiples gains, hundreds of percent gains for Bitcoin. And I think that that's what we're on the cusp of. All right, let's talk MSTR. I'm going to do a quick run through. I might do a longer video tomorrow, so make sure you subscribe because it's only 6:45 p.m. on the East Coast, but I'm still a little bit in like European time zone. My body thinks it's midnight, so I'm slowing down here. All right, I'm going to show you what I see. If I just make a fresh MSTR chart, which is what you have in front of you, this is essentially what I'm seeing at a glance. All right, I see something like this, a big wedge. This is a high time frame, weekly time frame. It looks like we did have a fake breakout, which, I mean, I for sure think that's what it was back in July. And then it pushed us underneath some significant moving averages. This is the weekly time frame. So the white line is the 21 EMA, the gray is the 30 weekly SMA, the blue is the 200-day, and the red is the 50 weekly SMA. And notice the convergence here. It's creating basically a magnet. You know, put the magnet emoji right there. And I think that's pulling price action up to want to test it. And what do you know? They're also converging right around this declining top of the wedge. Now they are above it too, so it makes me think we do break out of this wedge, but time will tell. Currently on the weekly chart, the top of the wedge is up there at 342, basically right around where we rejected today, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But I do think that we have a date with destiny to, like, again, if you're bearish MSTR, you would still expect to see another test and rejection off the 200-day, wouldn't you? Or at least some of these other significant moving averages. But when I put that little wedge decline line there, it actually makes you think maybe we don't. But if I want to be bearish, I want to go short, assuming a rejection when it backtests some of those significant moving averages personally. So that's what I think comes next. Again, just a big, giant wedge. And the fact that we're underneath is bearish, but if I look at it through the lens of, I think MSTR is going to $1,000 a share by December, which, yes, is in the cards, and I'll show you in a second how we get there, then being underneath them just to build up power and break out, to me, like, even though it seems silly to say, because this is the definition of a sign of weakness to be under here. If that, like, again, I just let my brain work backwards and I'm like, okay, where was the shakeout? They can't make it easy on retail. Oh yeah, we broke up and then we just went in a straight line vertically and front ran the Bitcoin breakout. You know what I mean? It's like, we already talked about Bitcoin, how it made a lot of sense that was a fake breakout before. Then we reconsolidated around the 1.618 fib at 112,000, resetting momentum oscillators, building up the momentum that's going to carry us to 181,000 next, before then we consolidate for a few weeks to a month and then push higher to 250K, right? These are all things that I think come in the future, and it's not financial advice. Let me show you. This is my favorite MSTR chart, my sell signals chart on the log scale. In the green channel up here, bullish bias. In or below that channel, in this little like red quadrant here, bearish bias. Now, last week, where we broke down, we did, again, there's lots of different ways to look at MSTR, and this is why I like to challenge myself to do just that and then share it with you guys and share it with my private group linked below, the casual plug there. But look at this. It did not violate this support that last Thursday, or that's Monday. This is a weekly chart. Whoops, let me pull up to Thursday. Last Thursday, of course, and it was like my busiest day. That was when I was still working, so it was brutal. I could barely be at my computer or my phone, but the support was down at 287. MSTR dropped as low as 292 and has since recovered. I also love how low MSTR went today. Notice that it respected the bottom of this channel. This channel is significant, guys. This channel has contained MSTR. I don't want to say it's contained MSTR's price action. That would be not accurate, but this has been like the bullish bias channel for MSTR since it became the first Bitcoin treasury company going back to 2020. All right. And the bottom of this channel literally connects. I'm going to switch it back to the weekly time frame. Literally connects to the COVID low right there. So none of this is random. I mean, look how many times on the high time frame, weekly time frame, we've interacted with the bottom of this channel. And the top of the channel extends to the 2021 top. All right. That first Bitcoin, MSTR has only been a Bitcoin proxy for one Bitcoin log chart breakout. We're about to live through the second, I think. So if you think that the first Bitcoin log chart breakout took us all the way up here, and this is a log chart, just a reminder, all the way to the top of the channel, which by the way, that set the top of the channel. So that it's not like it took us to the top, it set the top. So now we extend this out, guys, because that set the top. Again, this is one of these things where it's like, go look at more charts, look at a lot of charts. And then if the top of the channel is set, that means that we haven't tagged it. You know what I mean? We haven't reintroduced it with MSTR price action. So I believe it's going to be like, no joke. If you want to know how I think I'm going to be able to tell us that we've topped when we top, I think we interact with the top of this channel for the second time, which is the more hidden time, because we only just recently set the top. I don't know if I'm doing a bad job explaining this. Like I said, I'm still adjusting to the time zones here. I feel like I speak more elegantly when my brain works a little bit better. But either way, I do think we test the top of this channel depending on when we get there. If we get there, honestly, my lean is that it's like May of 2026, which is going to be like 3,900 MSTR. No joke. We're talking a 10x, which if a 10x seems crazy, it's not, because the previous MSTR run that correlated with a Bitcoin log chart breakout was 2020 to 2021. And it literally did more than a 10x back then. Okay. So, and I mean, it would be a more than a 10x, honestly, if you go from the low or the recent low in the 290s. So we're just talking about what had happened before happening again in the exact, I don't want to say the exact same. Of course, it's not the exact same, but like it is a Bitcoin log chart breakout. So of course, feel free to make fun of me, tell me I'm wrong, whatever. It doesn't bother me. Like, I'm showing you that there's a basis for everything I'm saying. And like a fraction of 1% of people, I think, that watch these videos don't get it and they feel the need to like make dumb comments. It's all good, man. It's a public forum, but we're back inside this green channel on the daily too. It respected the channel. Like, it respected it. When you see these interactions with the channel, what it's doing is validating that the channel is significant. And like I said, this is not going to be a long one. I'll do a longer video tomorrow, but the significance of this channel, I think, is yet to truly reveal itself. When it comes into play again, when the top of this channel comes into play again, that's this part, then hey, you know, I mean, and honestly, I think we're going to make the most money shorting MSTR from the top. That's a whole nother story for a different day. But I think that going long via call options at the bottom is not nearly as profitable as going short via put options at the top. Because as you saw at the most recent aggressive top that sold off 30% in one day. Yes, you heard that correctly. Yeah, you know what I mean? You don't get a 30% gain in one day from the bottom, but you can get a 30% decline off the top. That's why I have a private community for MSTR bag holders. Anyways, guys, I love seeing that this daily candle respected the bottom of that channel. I think that we resume upward soon. I did want to close the video off by saying that we cleared a hurdle today. That was the .com bubble top at 333. Depending on like the bars you were looking at and doing Fibonacci retraces, 331 today also was a hurdle that we needed to clear. So today cleared two hurdles, and then it rejected off of the IPO trend line. Again, I don't know anybody else talking about that other than me. This pink line on the log chart right here that you're seeing goes all the way back to the inception, to the initial public offering of MicroStrategy back in 1999. Do not tell me. See, I just have a tough time believing that AI is a new thing. I think it's new to the normal average consumer like me and you, but tell me that these market maker algorithms weren't using AI decades ago, right? I believe that because it's the highest stakes on a, at least in a monetary quantifiable sense in the world, the market maker algorithms that essentially have been exploiting retail for their own gains since I was born, probably, I don't know. But this IPO trend line is coming into play 26 years later, 26 years, that's insane. That's the next hurdle we need to clear. So tomorrow, all right, this is a weekly time frame. Tomorrow, the IPO trend line is up at 344.65. So I'm hoping that we essentially get back up there, or maybe we gap up above. It doesn't look to me like that's realistic to happen. I guess it all depends on Bitcoin, but MSTR is currently at 340. It wouldn't surprise me if we gap up above it. Maybe that is like a Friday thing. And I actually did predict in my private group last night, when Bitcoin was still in that wedge that we had just looked at a second ago, that we test MSTR 350 this week. And I talked about why in that private video. But I mean, so far, so good. We got up to 343 today, rejected off this level. If we clear that level, 350 and a date with destiny with the 200-day moving average, to me, would make a lot of sense. If you're irresponsibly long MSTR like I am, how much would it be worth to you to have somebody who's in the charts daily looking for the perfect entry for shares and options, and eventually looking to see if we might have topped and it's time to take profits? If this is something that interests you, I want to invite you to check out my MSTR generational wealth community linked below.